We do represent a nurse who used to work at the University of Vermont Medical Center. She had a conscience, which her fellow colleagues knew, conscience objection to participating in elective abortions. And there are laws on the books, the Church Amendment laws on the books that protect Americans with these conscience protections. She filed a complaint with what was the newly formed at the time Conscience and Religious Freedom Division that was formed by the Trump administration, the HHS Office of Civil Rights. The Department of Justice decided under the Trump administration that they could not come to an agreement with the University of Vermont, that they had to file a federal lawsuit. So that was about to begin. The lawsuit was about to begin, and then the Biden administration, surprise, surprise, pulled the plug on that lawsuit.
The statutory law matters, but so does administration of the law. So does enforcement of the law. We saw both of those things finally start to take place under the last administration, but right now you've got HHS Secretary Javier Becerra and the Attorney General Merrick Garland. Jordan, they're not administering the law. They're not enforcing the law.
Her name, it was actually on a list of nurses who had moral and religious objections to being part of those kind of procedures. She was told she put her scrubs on for the operation. Then she was met by the surgeon who knew of her objection, who said, "Don't hate me." And then she had to participate in what is, again, as it stands now, a legal killing under U.S. law of an innocent human being.
This nurse did not want to file a civil lawsuit. We talked to her about that as an option. She didn't want to put her family through the anxiety and the rigors of what a civil lawsuit entails, especially when we were able to tell her there was now something called the Conscience and Religious Freedom Division, which would take her case and vindicate her rights against the University of Vermont. She wouldn't get anything out of this personally, but they would vindicate her rights and those of her colleagues who also had been subjected to pressure and in some cases coercion to participate in abortions. Not only did HHS take this case, they referred to it as the most open and shut conscience violation case they had ever seen. The Department of Justice did file a lawsuit on her behalf 8 months ago. And now, all of a sudden, because there's a different name at the top of the department's letterhead, they've decided to abandon the position that they vigorously and forcefully argued last December and have asked the court to just drop the case and said to the University of Vermont, "We're sorry we investigated you. Have a nice day. Never mind." It's a complete outrage.
There is a legal and a moral issue that are tied to this. The moral issue, of course, the obvious one is abortion itself, but there is also the moral issue that this individual nurse in this particular case, that her rights also were legally transgressed on, but that is not just a legal issue, that is a moral issue too. And there needs to be recourse, there needs to be right of action to protect people like this, because the legal issue and the morality of this abortion and of forcing people to perform abortions are inseparably connected.
This individual's rights were violated, and that shouldn't matter to Javier Becerra, as extreme as he is for this individual. But that's how extreme he is, Stan. That is how this is why there was so much opposition to his appointment and to be HHS secretary.
Whether he agrees or doesn't agree with federal law, it is his obligation to uphold it. And frankly, it's the Attorney General's obligation to uphold it too. So if a decades-old statute was violated, and if this nurse's fundamental rights were violated, as they clearly were in this case, it is their duty, Jordan, to enforce that law.
If it was someone saying, "I don't want to be, I'm against the draft, I'm against the war," they have conscience protections. We allow these conscientious objectors. We always have in our country. Right. And I feel like Javier Becerra would be standing beside them.
Oh, absolutely.
But when it came to the pro-life nurse, that same kind of objection, which we're not supposed to get into and analyze why and how, because that's what the courts have said, they say they side with the big industry or the big hospital over the individual.
The hostility is what's new. I mean, before we had apathy. The Church Amendment was passed in 1973 by an overwhelming majority of Democrats and Republicans in the United States Congress, including, by the way, Joe Biden. Yeah. The reason that it was passed was we understood that what the Supreme Court had done in Roe v. Wade, legalized abortion in the United States. But it was understood by people of goodwill on both sides that there were deeply held religious beliefs by millions of Americans against participating in this. And what they tried to do was to make it legally impossible for employers to force pro-life healthcare workers to have to violate their consciences. we had the government finally putting teeth in that amendment. Not exactly a shock. As of this week, that's over with.
With elections, you put in new actors. We don't know if they'll continue to even operate this HHS new civil rights office that they open. But at the same time, it does remind people the hostility still that exists at a major level, including at the cabinet level, when it comes to just people's rights. They don't believe that those rights should be protected. I mean, that's the bottom line. That's what the Department of Justice is saying. That is the outrage part of this.